the two big questions now are whether Jeremy Hunt's astounding about-face on the Truss economic plan will succeed in calming the markets and stabilizing the economy and shoring up the currency, and whether Truss herself can survive this rather bizarre political moment. In theory, she has almost a year's grace, but in reality, I think she may be one or two missteps away from her own party changing the rules and tossing her out. I think the reason why they might not do it is that it would make them look ridiculous, and the Conservative Party, I'm afraid, cannot afford to look any more ridiculous.
No, well, to be honest with you, I don't think politics can stand to look any more ridiculous if it tries. And I love the way that we are focusing all attention here just on the Conservative Party, as if somehow the Labour Party is the magic solution to this, which of course they are clearly not. I'm not being funny, but it wasn't that long ago that the Labour Party were absolutely all over the news because of the way that they had let anti-Semitism spread through it like an absolute plague. And I find it absolutely staggering that any British Jew would even contemplate thinking that Labour are vote-worthy to get into power.
This idea of Jews voting based on theoretical Jewish interest or based on who is more anti-Semitic, and I think there's anti-Semitism everywhere, is a little offensive to many of the Jews. No, I mean, it's a little offensive to the Jews, frankly. Maybe they vote as Britons first, and maybe they recall that Britain went through a rather spectacular boom in the first decade of the 21st century, and a series of missteps, to be polite, under the Conservatives, beginning with austerity, going to Brexit, and the calamitous COVID policies, the ridiculousness of Boris Johnson, and the current incapacity of the Conservative Party. Labour is no panacea, but if you compare the two, you compare the 2010s to the 2000s, I don't think it necessarily puts Conservatives in a better light, frankly.
I think that we can all agree that politics in Britain and any country that claims to be a democracy is not a game of pass the parcel. It's not a game of fantasy football where a party that wins an election has carte blanche to do exactly what it wants for 5 years, exactly when it wants and how it wants and with who it wants. It doesn't work like that.
You keep saying that you can't do this and that is not how it works, but the fact is that you can do it, and that is how it works. I might agree with you that it appears illegitimate and absurd, but in fact the rules do allow it, just like the rules in Israel allow a prime minister to run for re-election while being on trial for bribery. I mean, certain rules may seem weird to us, but they are the rules. And in Britain, the Conservative Party is absolutely allowed to do precisely what it's doing. They can change 3 more prime ministers until 2024. Now, I do agree that in Britain there is the quaint and very special tradition of doing the right thing and not being unsporting, and we'll see how that plays out. And I don't rule out that indeed they will agree to a general election just because there's pressure for it. But I have to point out, in Israel, the Likud would never do that. In America, not that you can change the election dates, but even if you could, the Republicans and the Democrats would never do any such thing. Britain, for the moment, a lot has changed, but Britain, for the moment, is still oddly traditionalist and quaint in its political behavior, and it's sort of a joy to behold. As is your guy's rancor, which reminds me of the rancor in Israel. I would like to throw another spanner in the works here and see what happens in this august forum. I mean, there's something in the background here. There is an issue that dare not speak its name, and that issue is Brexit. I am pretty sure that if Labour comes back to power, that will give a lot of succor to the people who are going to say, I told you so, about Brexit causing a decline in the economy, general chaos, and having been based on a campaign that was heavily mendacious. So, Labour's not going to say anything to rock the boat right now, certainly not before the campaign. But if they come to power with a supermajority, and the British electoral system inflates majorities into supermajorities, I would be very surprised if the notion of holding a second referendum or reversing this or doing a new and a less dramatic breakup deal with the European Union comes back. And I would note, before we trash this notion too much, that the young people would support this.
I think most of us with a level head knew that there would be a short amount of pain for long-term gain. So let's clarify that straight away.
That's exactly what they said during the referendum campaign, isn't it? What absolute nonsense.
I don't care what they said during the referendum campaign. As far as I'm concerned, I think most
hundreds of millions to the NHS. I mean, it was going to help. It was going to help the NHS. How's the NHS doing now when it takes you 10 hours to get an ambulance?